The federal agent turned his computer screen toward me, and I watched his hands tremble as he pointed at the number displayed there. $8,700,000. The figure blurred in my vision, and I had to grip the edge of his desk to keep from collapsing right there in that small office in downtown Seattle. At 62 years old, I thought I'd seen everything life could throw at me. I was wrong. Let me back up. My name is Marcus Chen, and for most of my adult life, I believed my father was a disgrace to our family name. That's what my Aunt Vivian told me the day he died, and I had no reason not to believe her. She was his older sister, after all. She was there at the hospital when he took his last breath in 2005. She handled all the arrangements. She told me what I needed to know. "Your father betrayed everything this family stood for," she said at his funeral, her voice cold as January rain. There were only 7 people there. No police honor guard, no flag on his coffin. Just me, my aunt, a bored priest, and 4 people I didn't recognize who left before the service even ended. I was 32 years old, standing there in a borrowed suit, trying to understand how my dad had fallen so far. James Chen had been a detective with the Seattle Police Department. That much I knew. What I thought I knew was that he'd been fired for corruption in 1998, taking bribes, my aunt said, working with the very criminals he was supposed to catch. She said he'd been lucky to avoid prison, that the department had buried it quietly to avoid scandal. For the last 7 years of his life, she told me, he'd worked security at a shopping mall, drinking away what little he earned, dying slowly from liver disease and shame. I'd believed every word. He left nothing but debts, Aunt Vivian told me after the funeral, standing in the parking lot of the cemetery. The house has to be sold to cover what he owed. There might be a small pension, but I'll need to manage it through probate. It'll take time. You understand, don't you, Marcus? I nodded like an idiot. What did I know about probate or pensions? I was working as a janitor at Harborview Medical Center, barely making rent on my studio apartment in Rainier Valley. My wife Sarah had left me 3 years earlier, taking our daughter Lily with her. Weekends only, the court said. Every other holiday. Child support took half my paycheck. I was in no position to argue with my aunt about my father's estate, such as it was. "I think it's best if you don't come around the house anymore," she continued, her thin lips pressed together in disapproval. "You're too much like him, Marcus. Weak, unreliable. This family has a reputation to uphold, and honestly, neither you nor your father have done anything but drag our name through the mud. I'll contact you when the estate is settled. Don't call me." She got into her Mercedes and drove away. I stood there in the rain, watching the groundskeepers lower my father's casket into the wet earth, feeling like I'd been cut loose from everything that connected me to my past. I was 32 years old, working a janitor's job my father would have been ashamed of, raising a daughter I barely got to see, living paycheck to paycheck in a city that was pricing people like me out with every passing year. But you know what? I kept going. That's what we do, isn't it? We keep going. I picked up extra shifts. I moved to a cheaper apartment in White Center. I made it to every visitation with Lily, no matter how tired I was. I taught her to ride a bike in the parking lot of my apartment complex. I helped her with homework at McDonald's because it was the only place with free Wi-Fi. I showed up. I kept my head down, and I worked. Years passed. Lily grew up into a smart, beautiful young woman despite my failures as a father. She got into the University of Washington, full-ride academic scholarship. That was 2019. She called me crying with joy. "Dad, I did it. I'm going to be a husky." I stood in the hospital break room where I'd taken her call, surrounded by mops and cleaning supplies, and cried like a baby. Whatever else I'd failed at, I'd raised a daughter who could achieve something. But then COVID hit. The scholarship covered tuition, but Lily still needed money for books, housing, food. Sarah had remarried by then, some tech guy from Microsoft, and she made it clear that supporting Lily through college was your responsibility as her father, Marcus. The problem was, I was 62 years old, still working as a janitor, and still living in that same apartment in White Center. The pandemic had cut my hours. I'd developed arthritis in my hands that made the work harder every day. I was falling behind on rent. Lily never asked me for money. That made it worse. She started working 2 jobs, trying to pay her own way. I'd see her on campus sometimes when I was working the night shift, walking with her head down, exhausted, 20 years old and grinding herself into the ground. Just like I'd done. Just like my father had done, or so I thought. November 2024. 19 years after my father died. I got an eviction notice. 3 months behind on rent. I'd been sending Lily what I could, even when I couldn't afford it. The landlord was done being patient. I had 30 days. My coworker, Tyrone Washington, found me sitting in the parking garage at 3 in the morning, just staring at that piece of paper. "Marcus, man, you okay?" He'd worked alongside me for 15 years. Good man, better friend than I deserved. I showed him the notice. He sat down on the concrete next to me, both of us in our janitor uniforms, old men trying to figure out problems we were too tired to solve. "You try the housing assistance program?" he asked. "City's got emergency funds. You served, right? Maybe there's veteran preference." I shook my head. My dad served. Vietnam. But that doesn't help me. Still worth a shot. What you got to lose? Fill out the application. Worst they can say is no. He pulled out his phone and helped me find the website right there. We filled it out together, sitting on the floor of that parking garage at 3 in the morning. Name, address, employment history, family information. When it asked about parents, I hesitated. Why do they need to know about my father? Tyrone shrugged. Just fill it out, man. Can't hurt. So I did. James Chen. Detective, Seattle Police Department. Died 2005. I didn't mention the disgrace part. What was the point? I submitted the application at 3:47 a.m. on November 8, 2024. I remember because it was my daughter's birthday. 20 years old. I'd scraped together enough to buy her a cake and take her to dinner at Denny's. Not much of a celebration for a UW junior, but she hugged me like I'd given her the world. Thanks, Dad. I love you. 3 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Government Exchange. Mr. Chen, this is Agent Rodriguez with the FBI. I need you to come to the federal building downtown. Today, if possible. It's regarding your housing assistance application. My blood ran cold. The FBI? Did I do something wrong? No, sir. But there's something we need to discuss. Can you come in this afternoon? Around 2 o'clock? I called in sick to work. First time in 5 years. Took the bus downtown, my mind racing through possibilities. Identity theft. Had someone used my father's information for something illegal? Was I about to be arrested for fraud I didn't commit? The federal building on 4th Avenue is an imposing structure of concrete and glass. I'd walked past it 1,000 times but never been inside. The security was intense. Metal detectors, x-rays, background checks just to get to the elevators. They gave me a visitor badge and directed me to the 7th floor. Agent Sofia Rodriguez met me in the lobby. She was maybe 40, professional gray suit, dark hair pulled back tight. Her expression was unreadable. "Mr. Chen, thank you for coming. Follow me, please." She led me down a hallway of identical doors to a small office at the end. Plain desk, computer, 2 chairs, 1 window looking out at the city. She gestured for me to sit and close the door. Then she locked it. That's when my heart really started pounding. "Mr. Chen, when you submitted your housing application, it triggered an automatic background check. That's standard procedure." She sat down across from me, her fingers drumming on the desk. "Your father's name flagged in our system. Look, whatever he did, that was 20 years ago. I didn't know anything about it. I barely saw him those last years." She held up a hand. "Mr. Chen, stop. Your father's file is sealed. Level 5 classification. I had to get special clearance just to view it, and I can only tell you certain things. Do you understand what I'm saying?" I didn't. I stared at her. She took a breath. "Your father wasn't fired for corruption. James Chen was one of the deepest undercover operatives this department ever ran. For 15 years, he infiltrated the Nguyen crime syndicate. Do you know who they were?" My mouth was dry. The Vietnamese gang? They ran drugs, prostitution, smuggling. They were all over the news in the 90s. They were one of the largest criminal organizations in the Pacific Northwest. Trafficking, extortion, murder for hire, money laundering. They had connections to cartels in Mexico, triads in Hong Kong, Yakuza in Japan. We tried for years to get someone inside. Your father did it. He spent 15 years pretending to be a dirty cop so he could feed us information. Do you understand? He wasn't corrupt. He was playing the role of a corrupt cop to gain their trust. The room tilted. I gripped the armrests of my chair. In 1998, we finally had enough to bring them down. Operation Silent Dragon. We seized assets worth $42 million. We arrested 87 people. We broke the syndicate completely. But your father's cover was burned. We had to make it look like he'd been fired, disgraced, to protect him from retaliation. The syndicate had eyes everywhere. If they knew he'd been federal, they would have killed him, and everyone he loved. Everyone he loved, I repeated stupidly. You mean me? She nodded. You were 18 when it went down. Your mother had already passed. Your father made the choice to let you think the worst of him, rather than put you in danger. He lived under surveillance until he died. We had agents watching him the whole time. The mall security job? That was us, keeping him employed and safe. My vision was blurring. Aunt Vivian said. What did she say exactly? I told her. Everything. The funeral, the estate, the house, the pension, the way she'd cut me off. Agent Rodriguez's expression darkened. Mr. Chen, your father's estate included a significant asset recovery payment. When law enforcement seizes criminal assets and there's an officer involved in the operation, there's a compensation system. Your father was entitled to payment from the Nguyen seizure. He set it up as a trust. For you. She turned her computer screen toward me. That's where we started. $8,700,000. This has been in trust since 2005, she said quietly. Waiting for you. Your father specified that you were to receive it upon his death, but only through official channels. He didn't want to risk the syndicate learning about it and coming after you. The executor of the trust was supposed to contact you once sufficient time had passed and we were certain there was no remaining threat. That executor was. She checked her screen. Vivian Chen. My aunt. My father's sister. Who'd told me there was nothing. Who'd told me he died in disgrace. Who'd taken the house, taken whatever else there was, and told me to stay away. She never filed the paperwork, Agent Rodriguez continued. She never contacted the trust administrator. As far as the federal government knew, you'd been informed and were simply choosing not to claim it. Your housing application with your father's information finally triggered the system to review the case. When I pulled the file, I saw the trust had never been dispersed, so I started digging. She pulled out a folder. Your aunt sold your father's house in 2006 for $430,000. She liquidated his pension, about $112,000. She had power of attorney over his accounts and used it to access everything. The trust, though, she couldn't touch without your signature. So she just never told you about it. Fraud. Theft. Embezzlement. The words floated past me like debris in a flood. I've already contacted the King County prosecutor, Agent Rodriguez said. They're very interested. The house sale alone is clear-cut fraud. She forged documents claiming to be the sole heir. That's multiple felonies. I need to see his file, I heard myself say. Everything. I need to know who he really was. She shook her head. I can't give you the classified details, but I can tell you this. Your father saved hundreds of lives. The Nguyen Syndicate was trafficking women from Southeast Asia, girls as young as 12. Your father's intelligence stopped that pipeline. He also prevented 3 separate assassination attempts on federal judges. He fed us information on drug shipments that would have flooded the streets with fentanyl before fentanyl was even widely known. He was a hero, Mr. Chen, a real one. The kind who never gets recognition because the work has to stay secret. I was crying. I'm not ashamed to say it. 62 years old, sitting in that FBI office, crying like a child. There's something else, she said gently. Your father kept a journal. It wasn't in the official file. After he died, one of the agents who'd protected him gave it to me. I wasn't supposed to keep it, but I did. I thought someday you might come looking. Wait here." She left the office. I sat there shaking, my mind replaying every interaction I'd had with my father before he died, the way he'd grown distant, the way he'd stopped talking about work, the way he'd looked at me that last Christmas I'd seen him, 2004, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. I'd thought he was ashamed. I'd thought he couldn't face me because of what he'd become. Agent Rodriguez returned with a worn notebook, spiral-bound, the cover water-stained. "This isn't official evidence. I'm not giving this to you. But you could accidentally leave here having read some of it. Do you understand?" I understood. I opened it with trembling hands. The journal was sparse. My father had never been much of a writer. But there were entries, dates, times, notes about surveillance, about meetings with FBI handlers, about the people he was pretending to work for, and scattered throughout, entries about me. The 15th of October 1995. Marcus made the basketball team. Can't go to his games. Too dangerous. Watched from the parking lot for 10 minutes. He's good. Better than I ever was. The 3rd of June 1997. Marcus graduated high school. I stayed away. Couldn't risk it. They're watching all the time now. He deserves better than this. The 22nd of November 1998. Operation went down. It's over. They think I'm dirty now. Marcus will think I'm dirty. Can't tell him the truth. The syndicate still has people out there. If they know he's my son and I was federal, they'll kill him just to make a point. Better he hates me and stays safe. The 12th of April 2001. Saw Marcus at the grocery store. He looked right through me. Good. That's good. Stay away, son. Stay safe. The 8th of July 2004. Diagnosed. Liver cancer. All those years of pretending to be a drunk finally caught up with me for real. Maybe that's justice. I won't live long enough to tell Marcus the truth. Maybe that's better too. Let him think I was a failure. Let him live his life without looking over his shoulder. The last entry was dated the 2nd of October 2005, 2 weeks before he died. Talked to Rodriguez. Made her promise the trust will stay protected until there's no more threat. Could be years, could be decades. Marcus will understand someday. Better he thinks I failed than knows the danger I faced. I hope he has a good life. I hope he forgives me. I hope he never knows how much I loved him. My love equals my silence. I closed the journal. Agent Rodriguez had turned away, giving me privacy, staring out the window at the Seattle skyline. What happens now? My voice didn't sound like my own. Now you claim what's yours. I'll put you in touch with the trust administrator. The money will be transferred to you within 90 days, minus some administrative fees. It's invested well. It's actually worth closer to $10 million now with interest. And the prosecutor will move forward with charges against your aunt. That part's going to be messy. Are you prepared for that? Was I? I thought about Lily, working herself to death at 20 years old. I thought about 30 years of believing my father was a disgrace. I thought about my aunt, living in her nice house in Bellevue, driving her Mercedes, taking cruises to Alaska while I mopped floors and struggled to keep a roof over my head. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. The next 3 months were a blur. The trust administrator, a patient woman named Helen Park, walked me through everything. The money was real. The investment portfolio was complex but solid. By January 2025, I had access to it all. The prosecutor, meanwhile, moved fast on Vivian. When they confronted her with the evidence, she tried to claim she'd forgotten about the trust. That lasted about 10 seconds. The paper trail was damning. Forged documents, falsified probate filings, the unauthorized sale of the house. She'd stolen over $500,000 in total, and she'd hidden the existence of an $8 million trust. They offered her a plea deal, 5 years in federal prison, restitution of the house sale proceeds plus interest, and a permanent ban from serving as executor or power of attorney for anyone. She took it. The alternative was going to trial and facing 15 years. I didn't go to the hearing. I didn't need to see her face. I needed to see someone else's. My father was buried in Crown Hill Cemetery, North Seattle. I hadn't visited his grave since the funeral. I was ashamed to admit it, but it was true. Why visit the grave of a man you thought had betrayed everything? I went on a cold morning in February when the rain was light and the cemetery was empty. His headstone was simple. James Chen, 1948 to 2005. Beloved Father. I'd always thought that last part was a cruel joke, something the funeral home added because they had to put something. Now I understood. I brought the journal. I brought something else too. Agent Rodriguez had made some calls. She'd contacted the FBI director, who'd contacted the Seattle Police Department, who'd made an exception to their policy about posthumous honors. They gave me my father's detective shield, the one he'd carried for 23 years before going undercover, the one he'd never gotten to retire. I placed it on his grave next to a bouquet of white lilies, Lily's favorite flower, named after my daughter, who would never be poor again, who would never have to work 2 jobs, who could focus on her studies and build the life my father had given his own life to protect. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said to the stone. "I'm sorry I believed it. I'm sorry I didn't come. I'm sorry I didn't know." The rain picked up. I stood there for a long time just feeling it soak through my jacket, washing something away. Anger, maybe. Grief. Shame. All of it mixing together and draining into the earth where my father rested. I thought about what Agent Rodriguez had told me. 3 assassination attempts prevented. Human trafficking stopped. Drug shipments intercepted. Hundreds of lives saved. And through it all, he'd thought about me, worried about me, loved me in the only way he could by staying away. "Lily got into UW, I told him. Full scholarship. She's studying to be a doctor. She's brilliant, Dad. You'd be so proud. She's going to help people. Just like you did." I touched the cold stone one more time. Then I picked up the shield and walked back to my car. Not the rusted Honda I'd been driving. I'd bought a reliable Toyota with some of the trust money. Nothing fancy. Just something that would start in the morning and not leave me stranded. I drove to the University District. Lily had an apartment now near campus. A nice one, safe, with good light and heat that actually worked. I'd paid the first year's rent in full. She'd cried when I told her about the money, about her grandfather, about everything. Then she'd hugged me hard and said, "Dad, you don't have to give me all this." But I did. Because my father gave me everything he had, even when I didn't know it, even when I hated him for it. That's what fathers do. We carry the weight so our children can walk lighter. I pulled up outside her building. She was waiting on the steps, backpack over her shoulder, ready for class. When she saw me, her face lit up with that same smile she'd had when she was 5 years old, and I'd pick her up from kindergarten. "Hey, Dad, you didn't have to drive me. I could have taken the bus." "I know," I said, "but I wanted to. Come on, I'll buy you breakfast before class." We went to a diner near campus. Real plates, hot coffee, eggs and bacon and pancakes. The kind of breakfast I could never afford before. We talked about her classes, her friends, her plans for summer break. Normal things, happy things. "Dad," she said as we were leaving, "do you think Grandpa would be proud of me?" I stopped on the sidewalk, the morning sun breaking through the Seattle clouds for once, casting everything in gold light. "Lily," I said, "your grandfather gave everything he had so you could have this life. He would be so proud of you. He is proud of you. I know it." She hugged me right there on the street. This brilliant young woman who was going to change the world, and I held her tight, thinking about the man who'd made it all possible by staying silent, by carrying his secrets to the grave, by loving us more than his own reputation or comfort or even his relationship with his son. I'm 62 years old now. I still work as a janitor, though I don't have to anymore. Tyrone asked me why. "Marcus, man, you got $10 million. Why you still pushing a mop?" The truth is, I don't know how else to be. 30 years of work built something in me I can't just walk away from, but I cut back my hours. I spend more time with Lily. I volunteer at the VA hospital, talking with other veterans, other families of veterans. I tell them about my father, not the classified parts, but the important parts. That service takes many forms. That sacrifice isn't always visible. That the quietest heroes often carry the heaviest truths. Last week, Agent Rodriguez called me. They'd finally declassified parts of my father's file. A documentary filmmaker wants to tell his story. Not the whole story, some things will always stay classified, but enough. Enough to show the world that James Chen was a hero. I said yes, because my father spent 15 years in silence. He died in silence. He deserves to be remembered in light. Tonight, I'll go back to Crown Hill Cemetery. I'll bring fresh flowers. I'll tell my father about the documentary, about Lily's latest test scores, about the house I bought in Maple Leaf with enough rooms for her to visit, about the college fund I set up for the grandchildren I hope to meet someday. And I'll thank him for the sacrifice, for the silence, for the love that asked for nothing and gave everything. The real inheritance wasn't the money. It was understanding that the greatest men sometimes carry their burdens alone, in darkness, without recognition or reward, because they know that their sacrifice allows others to walk in light. My father was one of those men. A warrior who fought a war most people never knew existed. A hero who wore disgrace as armor to keep his son safe. I'm Marcus Chen. I'm 62 years old. I'm a janitor, a father, and the son of a hero. And I spend every day trying to be worthy of the name he gave me, the life he protected, and the truth he carried to his grave so I could live free. That's the inheritance that matters. That's what I'll pass to my daughter. That's what she'll pass to her children. Not the money, though that helps. The lesson. That love sometimes wears the face of absence. That sacrifice sometimes looks like failure. That the most profound truths are often the ones spoken in silence. My father never got to hear me say I was proud of him. He never got to know I understood. But I believe somehow he knows now. I believe he sees Lily thriving. I believe he sees me finally standing tall, carrying forward his legacy, telling his story. And I believe that wherever warriors go when their watch is done, he's at peace, knowing that his mission succeeded. He kept us safe. He loved us in the only way he could. And in the end, that love endured. That's all any father can hope for. That's all any warrior fights for. To protect what matters, no matter the cost, no matter the silence, no matter the years. Thank you, Dad. I understand now. I love you. And I'll make sure the world knows what you really were. Not a disgrace. Not a failure. Not a drunk security guard dying alone. A hero. A warrior. A father who gave everything. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure that truth, your truth, lives on.